refreshments, food and beverages as needed. We're a pretty informal crew here. But welcome to the 2024 annual meeting of the Willy Street Co-op. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:50 p.m. I'm Sarah Larson, the current board president, and really grateful and appreciative of you all showing up today and for your support of the co-op over the last however many years, but in particular this year when we're celebrating our 50th anniversary. The first thing we're going to do today is assign a timekeeper, and I'm really grateful for Tatiana for volunteering to be our timekeeper today. Thank you, Tatiana. Next on our agenda today is to just approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda from a board member today? Carol?
I move we approve the agenda.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Thank you, Anthony. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank
Not
you.
very hard.
Next on the agenda, we do have the approval of the minutes. We currently are not at quorum, so we won't be able to take a vote at the moment, but we will circle back to the minutes later in the meeting to look for a vote of approval. So please, if you, just to note that there are copies of the minutes at the front of the building of Aubergine. If you did not pick one up and want to scan them, I think they're also online, but we'll come back to this and request a vote to approve the minutes from the last annual meeting. All right. Next, moving on, just a couple words from me on just acknowledging the wonderful place we are at this year, coming into 5 decades of the Willy Street Cooperative. And you'll see that we're surrounded by some lovely mementos and photos and historical artifacts of those last 50 years, so I encourage folks to take a look and take a glance at them, and to also observe the other celebration opportunities and recognition events that are happening in support of that, including a Gallery Night exhibition that's happening this Friday here in Aubergine. And I'm sure we'll hear more about some other things that are happening in here. Moving into our 2025 fiscal year, we are in a strong position, financial position, and we'll hear more about that from Anya's update that will be coming a little bit later. We've also added, just thinking through some things that have happened in particular in the last year, we made a concerted effort to add an 8th cooperative principle to the Willy Street Co-op's set of the 7 kind of foundational cooperative principles, and that principle was on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's something that we continue to really build our strategic initiatives around and expand our knowledge and education on to ensure that we are a space that's welcome to everyone. And so really looking forward to furthering that work, furthering our 3 priorities that we identified in the strategic plan, and finding ways to be relevant and around for the next 50 years. We also have an exciting panel this afternoon that's going to be, or this evening, that is going to feature some of those kind of founding members of Willy Street Co-op who have been around for a while and have some insights into kind of where we've been, and also some insights into where they might hope we go into the future. So really looking forward to moving into that as we kind of round out the end of our annual meeting today. With that, I have just a couple more things before I turn it over to Anya. One is I want to acknowledge our current slate of board members. We have 5 board members in the room. I'd love for Anthony, Carol, Tatiana, and Ike just to either stand up or wave and just kind of everyone. Thank you all for your service and for your terms with us. We do have 3 additional board members who are unable to join us today: Isabel, Nancy, and Gigi. And again, really grateful for their support and work they do to really further the governance of our cooperative. I have 3 just short announcements. One is this meeting is being recorded. Thank you, Brendan. Please make sure you've signed in, both for quorum, but also for the prizes that will be awarded later in the meeting today. And then please silence your phones just during the tenure of this meeting today if you have not already. Thank you all. And then with that, I'm going to hand it off to Anya for our year review and our financial update.
this year's annual meeting. I appreciate you being here this evening. When we picked the date for this meeting, who knew we would have such who knew we would have such notable competition for tonight's events? But I do believe we will get you out of here by 8 p.m. so you can watch the vice presidential debate. Okay? All right, so this year, 2024, marks a significant milestone for our co-op. This year, we celebrate our 50th anniversary. And in recognition of our 50th, we have some 50th anniversary cups, which we want you to all take one, just as a small token of appreciation and a party favor. So 50 years ago, in 1974, a year of significant events indeed, including President Nixon resigned in response to the Watergate scandal. Braves baseball player Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's home run by hitting his 715th home run. And later that same year, Aaron opted to not retire, but to sign on as a Milwaukee Brewer. Also that year, Barbra Streisand had the top song of the year with "The Way We Were." Granola and muesli were popular health foods. And Willy Street Co-op opened its first storefront on Williamson Street. So it's wonderful to return to an in-person event after several years of holding a virtual annual meeting. We're excited to host this in-person meeting at our new community space, Aubergine. So take a minute to look around. This is our new space that you helped create, and it is for you and the community. Thank you so much for making this happen. And this helps us realize one of our ends, which is to nourish and enrich our community. All right, so our business has been fairly routine for these last 50 years. We employ people, we buy products to sell, and we serve our owners and customers. I'd like to share a few highlights from last fiscal year, as well as a few for the coming year. In the world of grocery cooperatives, Willy Street Co-op is considered one of the country's largest consumer co-ops, with 3 retail stores, 1 production kitchen, a centralized administrative office, and our newest space, Aubergine. I've seen the co-op grow from $1 million a year in sales to $1 million a week in sales. Last fiscal year, we sold $64.9 million in groceries. We employed 400 people, and we served our 33,750 active owners. At our annual meeting last year, I reported that the board and the management team had been conducting strategic planning work to determine what areas need special focus in the next 3 years. The input we gathered from our owners from the strategic initiatives suggested that vendors and local products were the 2 areas most important to our owners. This year, management developed an operational work plan to support the strategic goals as identified by the board of directors. The strategic goals and objectives are: create a thriving Willy North, by expanding and strengthening our relationships with the Northside community, and by improving sales to allow for financial sustainability of our North location. Our second goal was empower each person's wellness journey by providing product and vendor information to our customers, providing fair trade sourced products that help to change the lives of workers and farmers, sourcing and promoting local products and services that have a greater impact on our local community, and promoting and highlighting inclusive trade vendors and products to foster diverse and inclusive businesses. And finally, Willy Street Co-op is recognized as a top employer, and that our focus is training and staff development and culture. We're about 6 months into our strategic plan work. Stay tuned for future updates. In March, we finalized our 3rd contract with the union, the United Electrical and Radio and Machine Workers of America. This new 3-year contract offers additional benefits and wages for our hourly employees while being mindful of our fiscal responsibility for our owners and the co-op's long-term success. The new contract increased entry-level starting pay to $18.15 an hour and offers seniority increases for service, an additional paid holiday, more flexibility and access to unpaid time, and additional bereavement leave. Additional projects and achievements last year. Self-checkouts were installed at Willy East and Willy North last fall. Volume continues to grow in this service. We moved to a new e-commerce platform called e-Grocery, which has streamlined the process and offers a friendlier user interface. We finalized our solar project planning for Willy West, and this coming week, installation of the solar array begins. And we completed a single-use plastic audit, which actually didn't yield as many options as we'd hoped, but the return of self-serve bakery offerings at Willy East is supporting using less plastic, and we plan to make self-serve bakery available at North and West in the coming year. So how did we do financially in fiscal 2024? We continued to be financially strong as in past years. We ended the fiscal year with just under $3 million in cash and a strong liquidity position, where our current assets are greater than a 1-to-1 of our current liabilities. At this time, many large co-ops have liquidity ratio of less than 1-to-1. So this is good news for our co-op. The last of our owner bonds that are on our books will mature in January of 2025. The $295,000 in bonds plus interest will be paid out within 30 days of their maturity date. These 7-year bonds were used to fund the remodel of Willy North in 2018. Again, thank you owners who supported us for this expansion and several other expansion projects in the past. Our $64.9 million in sales was an increase of almost 4% over previous years. This shows strong growth compared to other co-ops our size, who averaged around 3%. Willy North had the greatest sales growth at 4.62%, with both Willy East and Willy West coming in under 4%. So in spite of lower sales growth than originally projected at Willy North, we continue to be committed to the success of that location. The cost of running North is similar to East and West, but the sales at North represent only 25% of overall sales. One of our goals over the next 2 years is for Willy North sales to grow to be in the range of 28 to 29% of overall sales. This will ensure that North is able to cover the costs to run that store and contribute to the overall financial success of our co-op. Our margin, the funds remaining after we pay our vendors for the cost of products we sell, has remained stable. Maintaining a stable margin has been an operational challenge for many co-ops, but at our co-op we have a strong infrastructure to ensure we can maintain our margin. Rising food costs are a concern for everyone. Inflation has continued to impact the food supply and grocery industry, but has slowed compared to 2022. The inflation rate for food at home prices in 2023 ran at 5%, compared to over 11% in 2022. This was due to a number of factors, including an easing of supply chain issues, wholesale food prices, and economy-wide inflationary pressures. The price increases you've seen at our co-op are due to the increases in the wholesale cost from our vendors. Inflation has continued to impact the prices you see at our stores as wholesale costs have gone up. In spite of strong sales last year, we had a small net loss of $287,000. This was due to our expenses growing faster than our sales revenue. We are anticipating that we will also have a loss in the current year, and it will take us 2 years to get our revenues and expenses in alignment, and by fiscal 2026, we anticipate we will again be profitable. The expense item that has grown significantly as a percent of sales is personnel costs. They grew by over 1% in fiscal 2024 to over 26% of sales. Personnel costs include wages and benefits paid to co-op staff. The increase in personnel costs was due to wage increases, expanded benefits, and being fully staffed as unemployment has gone down. We realize we have some heavy lifting to do in terms of sale growth and managing expenses in order to achieve profitability in fiscal 2026. We look forward to paying out patronage as we did in fiscal 22 and 23, as soon as we return to profitability. So in closing, last week the board hosted a reception for former and current co-op board members, founding staff, and current staff with 20 years of service at the co-op. It was a special treat to see a few familiar faces and meet a few of the co-op's founding members and staff. Following the business portion of tonight's meeting, there will be a panel discussion when you'll have a chance to hear from Steve Rankin, Steve Rooney, and David Spare, who some of you may know as Rosebud, about the early years of Willy Street Co-op, as well as the importance of the cooperative business model. Before I introduce our next speaker, I wish to thank everyone, including staff, owners, and the board of directors, for 50 successful years. We are here because of you. Thank you all for being part of the journey. And now I want to welcome Ashwini Rao, because he's going to introduce this year's board candidates.
Thank you all.
Good evening. My name is Ashwini Rao, as Anya mentioned, and I am currently serving as a vice president at the co-op board, on the co-op board. And it is a pleasure and absolute honor to introduce the board of candidates. We have, as you may be aware, we have 4 open slots, and we have 6 candidates running for those slots. 2 of them are currently on the board of directors, and the rest are owners of the co-op. If you get a copy of the reader, you might have already read their statements. If you don't get a copy of the reader at home, you can go online and read their statements. Just know that the voting period starts today and ends on 16th of October. And you can either vote by mail, you can vote online, or you can vote, there is another way, which is the other way, by phone. So just so you know, those are your options. And with that, we will introduce the first candidate, which would be Tatiana Dennis.
Hello everyone. I'm so excited to be here tonight. It's so beautiful seeing everyone's face. My name is Tatiana Dennis. I have been serving on the board for the past 3 years. I've sat on the DEI committee, development committee. It was such a joy. I have nothing but great things to say about our board. A little bit more about me. I'm a grant writer for a local nonprofit. I'm a yoga instructor. I am an animal lover of all shapes and sizes. And I first got into the light bulb of local food went off for me when I was working for a sustainable agriculture nonprofit abroad. And I got brought back in 2020. And I was thrilled at the opportunity to serve on the board and continue serving the community that raised me. So thank you so much and happy voting.
The next candidate up is Sarah Larson. Woo!
Hi everyone. I have been serving on the board, I think, for 4 years, in the board president role for a year and some months. I will just echo Tatiana that it's just been such a joy to serve with the candidates on the board and to really find ways to support the co-op and its growth over the time I've been on the board, but also with an eye towards the future and how we can continue to make a great impact and serve the community. I first got into co-ops through living in a housing co-op in Madison, women's over on I can't even remember, Franklin, yes, which is now Avalon. And then got really into food, and so this food co-op thing has been a really amazing synergy. And yeah, I am excited to put my name in the hat again to serve on the board, but also really excited that we have a contested election and a lot of applicants that are showing interest and showing up to really support the co-op. So thank you.
So the next candidate is Karen Murphy, and as I don't see her here, so well, you can read her statement definitely in the reader. What I will do is provide the summary statement for your benefit. She states in the reader that I have previously served on the board of directors, which she did, and I also chaired the board development committee in 2023. I'm excited about the opportunity to represent owners again, and I hope to use my experience with board operations and policy governance to support the continued stability and success of our thriving co-op. So I would suggest please go back to the reader or go online and try to find a statement to know more about Karen. With that, the next person would be Deb Shapiro, who is not here as well. Okay, so Deb's summary statement, and she's also a former board member. She's running for the Willy Street board because after serving on the board from 2005 through 2012, she believes she can make a significant contribution to the co-op's purposes of making local, organic, and natural foods available to the Madison community while providing an inclusive and supportive workplace. So with that, Dan, I know Dan is here. So we'll welcome Dan.
Good evening. My name is Dan Streit. I am running for the board because I absolutely love local food. I think about the dinner that I'm going to eat that's in my backpack right now, and I can name where all but one of the ingredients came from, and I love that. That's important to me. My day job is with a local nonprofit that works on equitable climate solutions. So in relation to that, I'm a systems thinker. And so when I think about food, I think about food systems. And I think that Willy Street Co-op is an absolute centerpiece of Dane County's food system. I think it's essential. I think that it has a fantastic role in making local, healthy, sustainable foods accessible to everybody. And I also think that while the co-op's doing a lot of great things to focus on emissions reductions and sustainability, I think that as with any of us, we can do more. And I'm excited to bring that experience to the board. Thanks.
And the final candidate is Jenny Ronstadt.
I decided to run for the board for a few different reasons. So I happened to be leaving the grocery store the other day, or recently, and so I was like, yeah, that'd be interesting. So I moved to the Dairy side a couple of years ago and just really love this community and love the different things that kind of happen, and I see that the way that Willy Street supports that, I think that's really beautiful. Last year I had some serious health issues and I turned to food as medicine, right? I really kind of approached that and was super happy that Willy Street had everything that I needed. Everything that I needed was right at the co-op. I didn't have to go searching for it, and that is a blessing because so many people don't have that option. So that was part of why I was like, yes, I want to be involved in something that at a grocery store that does that for its community. So I have several years of accounting experience, and a lot of that has been in higher education and healthcare. So I've been on a lot of committees that support wellness and restructures. And okay, I guess I gotta wrap up. So just having that ability ability to be on committees and policies and work with policies and understand the different needs for different departments and move things forward. So anyway. We're turning it over to Anya for Q&A.
So this brings us to the Q&A segment of the meeting. We requested owners to submit questions prior to meeting. We received none, so we don't have any to respond here. But are there any from the floor that we can address? One, yes.
How often do you guys clean out the bulk containers, including spouts? Just wondering.
That is a good question. I do not know the answer to that, but I will find out. Do you mean the like the gravity feed dispensers? That okay. I'm going to report that in my next newsletter report. How's that? Okay. Any other questions? That is a good question.
Oh, I was just wondering, noticing the staff shortages, do you have a sense of why that's happening and what the co-op is doing about that?
Actually, we're doing pretty well staffing-wise. 2 years ago, we couldn't hire enough people or retain enough people to fill the shifts we had. Right now, we actually have a pretty full staff. If it doesn't mean that people don't call in on occasion, but from a staffing perspective, we're doing pretty good right now.
You just had signs up on these saying, you know, due to staffing shortages, we're closing this department earlier than usual.
Oh,
things like that.
there are a
Seem
couple
different.
departments that have been struggling. Meat in particular has had some challenges in the last 15 months. And we're working to resolve that. We're trying to bring in some people to help the butcher.
We're also doing, and I'm the director of people and culture, so we're also doing kind of this comprehensive review of where are we putting our staff and at what times on what days. And we found some opportunities to be more efficient that will help some of those shortages that we have so that we're sure we're using the people in the right place at the right time.
I'm really glad that you did a plastic review. Is there a requirement that the meat and fish departments wear plastic gloves and change them each time? I came to the co-op because I didn't want to buy meat in a plastic container. And so I knew that I could get bulk meat there. But then the person wore plastic gloves and it was just as much plastic.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
so is there a way to avoid that?
I think gloves are particularly, when handling food, it's a requirement. I don't know if it's the packaging of, if it's a wash with the packaging versus gloves. But it is a health requirement if food is handled with gloved hands.
Yes. We implemented the checkouts, the self-checkout kiosks. How is that going?
Actually, it's going really well. East, I admit, I thought East was going to be the hard sell for self-checkouts. I believe if the numbers that were reported to me, 50% of all transactions at East are going through self-checkouts. So that to me says it's actually successful. For smaller purchases, we still have the option of going through a staffed register lane, but I think for quicker, smaller purchases, folks are using the self-checkouts. And they're doing not quite as well. Between 35 and 45% of the purchases at North and West are through self-checkouts. Yeah.
And yeah, how long have you worked there?
Wow. Well, I walked into the co-op the first time in 1985. And I spent 2 years volunteering, and then I was hired in 87. And I was hired as a sub, and I worked in several departments. And I'll tell you, I was not a good cashier. But I was good in the grocery department, and I was good in produce. And then in '95, the GM at the time resigned, and the board was looking for a new GM. And it was a hard hire, couldn't find someone to fill, and I said, I'll fill in on an interim basis. And so I guess that means 28 years later, I'm still in the interim capacity. Any other questions? All right, I think we're now. I'm so sorry.
I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to how you characterize staff morale.
How is staff morale?
Yeah.
Well, you know, some days it's good, some days it's bad. I think that when we're fully staffed, things run a little better, so that, you know, the workload is shared amongst everybody and not just the few that happen to be there. I think the new contract was good for the staff. I think when sales are strong, it's good for the staff as well. So I like to think it's good.
But it will depend who you ask.
That's a schedule for next year.
Is there any cross-training among staff so that they may do half their shift as a cashier and half it in another area of the store?
Yes, there is.
Yes. And I was just thinking that a full shift of cashiering is really hard on her body and for ergonomic reasons, it'd be nice to have the dog change up with it.
We've always had the option for people to request that, but we have a store clerk model to where you're not hired just as a cashier only. You're not hired only to do produce. And we're seeing people want to take more advantage of that. And we're also, with our new clerks that are coming in, setting that expectation up that we may have you in grocery, but we're going to cross-train you in other departments so that we can all kind of help each other out as well. So we are seeing more of that just in the past year even.
We are over time.
We are over time. Well, do we know if Rosebud's going to show up? Well,
He'll talk it about it.
you can
Take like
Well, we're going to move to the panel portion of our meeting, and it is a real thrill for me to introduce two people who I have been corresponding with for, well, several years, but most intently in the last couple months, who really wanted to be here to address the ownership as part of the annual meeting. Steve Rankin and Steve Rooney, both founding owners and staff of the co-op. So you're here, yay, I'm so thrilled. We've got questions that are going to be posed, but mostly we just want to hear your stories. Sarah's going to lead the discussion, and maybe I'm going to see if I can get a hold of Rosie.
All right, everybody, we're going to get started here in a few seconds. If you want to finish up conversations and find your way to seats or wherever you're comfortable, that would be wonderful. You guys are so good. Wonderful. That was really quick. Thank you for saving me from claps or whatever those tools are. Yeah, so as Anya mentioned, we're really excited to bring a panel here of some kind of founding members or early co-op movement folks to share their stories and kind of just help us remember and honor the work that has happened to bring us to where we are today. And I have 4 short prompts or questions for everybody on the panel. And we're going to open it up to questions from you all. So think about if you have anything you want to ask this panel of participants. The first one is really easy, and I bet what you're expecting. It's just an introduce yourself and share a bit about your history with the co-ops and Willy Street Co-op. And maybe where you traveled from, because we do have somebody who wins the furthest travel award up here.
I think so. Since we live around the corner from each other, it's not us.
Yeah. Rosebud, or you want to start that way? Steve Rankin, would you like to start?
My name is Steve Rankin. I was one of the first staff of the co-op. I started in January of '74. We opened in October 9th of 74. I have a trivia question for you. The other night when we had this little reception here, I had some awards for some people who are not co-op owners, but people who were instrumental in getting the co-op going, vendors, people like that, our graphic artist, Holly. But does anybody want to take a guess as who the longest standing supplier of Willy Street Co-op is?
I guess I can. Gila Orchard?
No?
TP Produce.
TV.
No.
RV Valley?
No. It is Slacks, Jams, and Jellies.
Some recognition.
The co-op had been open for about a week or two, and I needed to get away, and one of the other early staffers, Nancy Brennan, offered me her van to go camping for the weekend. I went up to Devil's Lake camping, and on the way home I stopped at an orchard, and I stopped at Slacks, and they didn't sell wholesale yet at that point in their history. And I said, I'd like to buy a couple of cases of mixed jams and jellies. And they said, okay. And so I hope, the gooseberry didn't sell well, I hope none of it's on the shelf over there. But once they became a wholesaler, they became a supplier. So if you go over there, you will still see Slacks, Jams, and Jellies on the shelf. And they've been there since about October 20th of 1974.
That's amazing.
My personal involvement in co-op started when I was 5 years old and became a member of CUNA Credit Union. I left Willy Street after 10 years, and I managed a housing cooperative in Northern California. I left there to build cooperative housing in a rural area of Nicaragua, and then I went on to do other things, not related to co-ops necessarily.
So for me, I'm Steve Rooney, born in Manhattan, but came here in 68 for school, supposedly. Supposedly did that for 2 years, and then my friend Greg, you know Greg, Ken and Greg's Granola. It became Nature's Bakery Granola. And Greg was a high school friend of mine, and he lured me into Nature's Bakery in 1972, I think it was, and Gary Tippler over here was still in the bakery, and so we became friends then. And then Then we found the 508 South Baldwin Street house that I named Melting Snow, because when I had to go start the checking account for the co-op, as we called ourselves, I had to come up with a name, and the snow was melting. So that was the name of Melting Snow. And then we bought a farm, because bakeries need a farm, right? We need to have honey, and we need to have onions for Gary's onion rye bread that Nature's Bakery was very fond of at the time, etc. And then the farm started to break apart. This would be in the winter of '74. It's out in Blue River. And the bakery was going well. Bunk and Ginny, part of our second wave of bakers that we recruited in the 72, 3, and 4, were running the bakery. And but meanwhile, Jerry Bridgman, who was, I think, really our founder. And I want to give a shout out to Jerry and his deceased wife, Denise. She's been dead, I believe, about 10 years. And Jerry was running around Madison in the early 70s, and others before him, but Jerry really carried the flag over the finish line at Holler's Co-op at one of its annual meetings. And the other night, Bill Winfield, who some of you may know as the founder of Holler's, was here, and also the founder of Mifflin Street. And we all had, I'm going to give you some spiel. Can I do that, or should we wait?
Yes, give us
Okay.
that. Well, the next one we will talk about the co-op's
Okay.
history, but
Okay.
time is for it, but don't stop the spiel, because I know folks want to
Well,
hear
no, but-
what y'all.
But
Yeah.
just to say that our personal experiences as members and/or customers of Mifflin and Whole Earth, and Nature's, of course, and then we had the restaurant, forgotten the name of it now. Sunflower Kitchen that my good friend Bajira, then known as Vicky Ratch, helped to found, and Bobby Golden, the ICC, the great trucking co-op, made possible our food co-ops, Pizza Buck, Cindy, etc. But all of these things that we were experiencing helped inform our vision for your co-op. And those founding principles are still alive, it's so great. Because, and believe it or not, they were really, it was an evolution. They weren't, each food co-op in Madison, or almost in Manhattan, were not born the same. They had a different genesis, each one. Even though Bill founded both Mifflin and Whole Earth, if you guys look at the history, you'll see they're completely different. And the products that they were selling, the people that used them, the neighborhoods they were in. So this was a co-op for the East Side, different neighborhood. And anyway, we can talk more about that. But Jerry inspired me to go to him in the spring of '74 and say, Jerry, I have 6 months to give to this project. Because I wasn't leaving. I'd already decided I was moving back to New York. And let's do it. And so with Steve, I mean, we were kind of the builders, physical builders of the first store. And then it's up and running. Yay!
We'll pick up a lot of that back. The second prompt is talking more about bringing co-ops into Madison and some of those founding impulses and principles, which I know you all were really excited to bring in and speak to. And so I think that's a great part in the transition where we can go a lot deeper into some of that. And then you guys can take notes if that spurs questions or things you want to hear more about. But I'd like to have Rosebud take that opportunity to introduce himself as well.
Yeah, so I'm David Rosebud Sparrow, and I've been a co-ops lawyer for, I couldn't find anything that told me exactly when I started, but I think about 40 years that I've been a lawyer for co-op. And I moved into Melting Snow that Steve was talking about, which is where I got the Rosebud name. Because there was another David who moved in the exact same day, so somebody gave us nicknames to tell us apart. My name stuck. I don't think his did. But anyway, so then I started living at Melting Snow, and most of the people, that was in '75, and most of the people who lived there were workers at Nature's Bakery, and the friends of those people were the people working at the co-op, and I just started being part of the whole co-op community. And that's the same time I was going to law school. So when all these kind of crazy hippies were looking for a lawyer, yeah, I could do it, man, sure, why not? And it just kind of went on from there. And kind of over the years, I just started working for more and more co-ops, and was the lawyer for Mifflin and Willy Street, of course, and Nature's Bakery, and Just Coffee, and Community Pharmacy, and Madison Community Co-op, and co-ops all over the country that I worked with, and just spent a lot of time doing things for co-ops over decades and decades.
You still do, right?
Well, I'm pretty much retired now, though I'm teaching at the law school now, but not co-op stuff. They really should have a co-op class there, but they don't. But they should.
We'll have action items after this letter writing campaign too. Awesome. So much rich history from you all and experience, both in Madison and around in your travels. But I'd love to hear you speak a little bit to how co-ops really came to Madison and what some of those founding principles were to help shape the Willy Street Co-op. And I know there were some things that you learned from other co-ops that you wanted to release under Willy Street to have it be successful.
In the spring of 1970 or 71 actually, a conference was held in Madison. It was called the New Nation Conference. And the New Nation Conference was dedicated to building a new society within the shell of the old. And the idea was to build a cooperative commonwealth. Essentially like from the movie A Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. It turned out to be not quite as easy as we thought it would be back then, but there was a time that Madison was home to not just grocery co-ops and food co-ops, but a bicycle co-op, a co-op garage for car repairs, a restaurant he mentioned, a number of co-ops, and the idea was to build a new society. We also got inspiration from the Mondragon region of Spain, the Basque country, kind of near the French border. And in Mondragon, they've had a cooperative commonwealth for 70 or 80 years now, I think. And what they learned there is that central is banking. That you need money to start cooperatives. You need to be able to finance them. Banking laws in the United States don't work that way, the way they do in Spain. So Mondragon established a bank, and from that bank they financed an entire region of cooperatives. There are 70,000 people in that region who are now employed by those cooperatives. They build everything from bicycles to washing machines. And so one of her later prompts, I think, is about, what do we see for the next 50 years? And for me, that's still there, that dream of building a cooperative commonwealth. We know it can be done if the conditions are right, because they're doing it in Spain and it's still working. And we know we have that impetus here, and I hope that one of these days that'll come to fruition here in a bigger way.
Well, I gotta just bust in and say there is a co-op bank. Well, there's a national co-op bank now, but although at first they were doing lots of projects, like they loaned money to some of the housing co-ops on Willy Street, Ridgeside Co-op, but now they don't really do any loans unless it's like 20 million or more. So they're not very useful, but there's a bank in Minneapolis called Shared Capital, which is set up as a co-op, and they only fund co-op developments. And so there have been a lot of the kind of worker conversions, like where somebody is selling, like an owner of a manufacturing company is deciding to sell, and then he sells to the workers, and then Shared Capital will be like a secondary lender that gets a kind of everyday bank to loan money, and then we do it.
I mean, it's really about businesses that are not owned by the people, but they're managed by the people, right? So even though you may not feel like you're managing your co-op, you are managing your co-op to the degree that you want to, because you actually have the power because of the structure. The structure has been created for you to influence and manage the co-op. And no one, you know that, right? As owners, and it's a question of how much do you personally want to get involved and be doing it. So the structure is a beautiful structure. Where it falls down is, well, a lot of us just don't really want to do the work, But it's at least a structure that's in place and available to run the businesses that are important to us for our, for our culture, for our society, for our needs. And Wisconsin is a very active place in co-ops. I mean, we have a lot more co-op activity here than I've seen in other places. And part of that probably has to do with the legal structures that are available. But, it's really about nonprofits. Co-op is just the type of nonprofit. So, but the beauty of the co-op is it takes it to a greater people-centric governance level. A nonprofit, you know, it's just a self-perpetuating board, usually. Most nonprofits are, the boards themselves recruit and select their replacement, and the boards then hire the chief executive, and the chief executive hires the staff. Now, it's beautiful in the sense that, and that's where I've spent my whole